So what I'd like to do this morning is just give you an update of where we are in general. I know many of you are very familiar with our projects that we're working on today. Certainly the Silver Line, the D2 alignment, second alignment downtown Dallas. I'll talk about both of those at a high level. And I know we have several DART people on the call today, the people that really know what's going on those projects. So I'm sure they'll either wince or they'll send me a note if I say something too terribly wrong. I'll also go over where we are with mobility as a service. Many times you have heard me talk about mobility as a service, where DART is in that journey. And then I'll also talk about where we are from a COVID perspective, what impact the pandemic has had on the agency, not only from a service, from a employee, from a customer, and from a budget perspective. So if we could get started, and Jeff, I think you're running the slideshow this morning, or am I? I think you are. Perhaps. Oh, there we go. So if we go to the next slide, one of the things that that we are very focused on is who our customers are. And as you think about our customers, it's probably more evident now than ever who our different customers are, what they do, and how they act. And so, Jeff, I don't know if you can go to the next slide or not.
Am I on the right slide, Gary?
If you go to the, well, at least from my perspective, you're still on the first slide, the cover slide.
I've got DART's mobility as a service framework.
Okay, the one I'm seeing is the cover slide. Maybe I'm.
Does anybody else see the third slide, or are y'all seeing the cover
No,
slide?
it's not moving, Jeff. You're still on the title slide.
Hey, Jeff, you may need to hit that enable editing button to allow it to get ready to show it in presentation mode.
Oh, okay. All right, let's try this now. Okay, sorry guys, let me try this again.
I can do it from memory, but.
All right, I'm going to try to share again. Sorry, y'all, this is definitely not my area of expertise. I know just enough to be dangerous. Okay, how about now?
That's great. Now, if you go back to slide 2, that would be perfect.
Okay.
There we go.
Now, can y'all see it? Hold on. Can y'all see it now?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Super. Sorry about that. Go ahead, Gary. Thanks.
See, you're already an expert, Jeff. Good job. So as we really look at who our customers are, we have the Reliant commuter. That's the person that generally uses the train or the bus, uses transit to get to and from work every day. We have the corporate commuter, normally someone that perhaps lives a little bit further out, probably has a car and goes to work, and that's really all they ever do on the train or bus. The task rider is, again, someone that's generally dependent on transit, and they use transit to go to the grocery store, to go to the doctor, to go to work, to go to school, perhaps, to go wherever they want to go. And then, of course, the event rider. Many of you probably have ridden the train or the bus to get to a hockey game or basketball game, or a concert, perhaps. So as you think about the different groups of riders and the different needs that they have, each one of them looks at transit from a little bit different perspective, through a little bit different lens. Today, most of our riders are the Reliant commuter and the task rider, the people that are generally a little more dependent on taking the bus or the train to work every day. Maybe they're an essential worker, but that's how they move around the community, is on trains and buses. The corporate commuter, as we all know and have talked about, right now most of the corporate commuters are working from home. We'll see how that changes as time goes on. And then the event rider, once events come back, whenever that might be, then we'll probably see the event rider come back. So if you go to the next slide, This slide's a little bit busy, but it really lays out how we look at pulling all of the different things together, whether it be in the upper left of this slide, the mobility services, which might include scooters. And as I drove to the office this morning, there are still people riding scooters to and from and around downtown, but it includes carpooling or bike sharing or transit, all the multimodal services. If you go to the bottom left of the slide, it really starts to look at the different apps, whether it be Wi-Fi trip planning, smart payments, or interactive kiosks that are being installed at all the platforms right now, real-time information. And then if you look at the lower right, the connected services, automated vehicles, of course, we're not quite there yet, but traffic management, dynamic parking, you know, and as I talk about traffic management, it's always a little eerie to me when I get in my vehicle in the morning and my phone says, oh, it's 6:30 in the morning, you must be going to work. Here's how long it's going to take you. Well, that's a little creepy. Wouldn't it be even better, though, if that phone said, here are your choices, here are the opportunities, here's how you could get to work, and here's how much it would cost, understanding that driving your car is not free. It's not even just the cost of the gasoline in your car. And then as you go up to the upper right, the P3 agreements, that's where we start working with other venues, the transportation network companies, the taxis, air taxis, and someone may say, well, that's, gee, that's a little far-fetched, isn't it? Well, as many of you know, it's really not far-fetched. It's here, it's now, and it's right around the corner from being a reality in North Texas. So as we look at what we're doing, DART's doing, certainly trains and buses are our core business, moving people safely, efficiently, effectively, but it's also, as many of you have heard me say over the years, it's giving people a choice. It's giving people a choice to get out of their car, but now it's really giving people a choice to use all the different modes and to have an informed decision, whether it's the cheapest trip, or maybe it's the most, maybe it's the shortest or quickest trip, or maybe you really do just want to ride a scooter in the middle of that trip. But this kind of framework starts to give the consumer the choice of making that trip however they want to make it. Jeff, if you go to the next slide. So as many of you already know, the GoPass app is our platform that we really use to pull all of these things together. The GoPass platform was developed in 2013. We rolled it out right about the time the state fair was going on in 2013, maybe not coincidentally. And at the time, when we rolled this out, it was really a low-cost entry into the technological payment world. As you may remember, systems around the country, around the world, were using smart cards. So if you looked at maybe Washington, D.C., or a few other properties around the country, they had a smart card technology. About that same time, maybe just before Chicago was introducing their smart card technology. And we were watching what they were doing, and it didn't take us long, but we realized pretty quickly that the Chicago system cost well over $300 million to implement, and that was the Ventra system. And as many of you knew then, that once it was implemented, it took several years to actually work some of the bugs out. We looked at that and we said, you know, we like the convenience for our customers. We can't afford that. We cannot afford to put hundreds of millions of dollars into a smart card technology. So we said, why don't we develop an app that has a payment function within the app, and we can do that for not hundreds of millions of dollars, but well under $5 million. So just for a couple $1 million, we can create this smartphone, smart type of way to use your technology, your device, to pay for the platform. That's how it started. We really hadn't thought about multimodal and how to integrate all the modes. But you know, the good news is it put us ahead of the curve, certainly in 2013, as people started realizing that this was a good way, a good platform, a good opportunity to give people those choices we were on the forefront of making that happen. So as the app has developed over the years, of course, as many of you've known, I've told the story before about how we've certainly integrated different things, how we've done fare capping. Something so simple, it seems like, well, why didn't we do that before? But one of the things that we realize is that low-income people in our community pay more for services, goods and services, than many of the rest of us do. They don't have access to all the same places, all the same things. And transit is no different, not just in North Texas, but all over the country. When you're selling a monthly pass or an annual pass, that's great if you can afford a monthly pass. But so many of our customers can't afford a monthly pass. So what do? They buy their pass one day at a time. Well, a monthly pass, you're only paying for 16 days. You get the rest of the month for free. So now, if you use and this happened back in 2018, if you use the GoPass or the GoPass tap card, and we actually do have a tap card now, it actually, number one, it determines the cheapest fare possible to take your trip, but it also counts your trips. And once you hit that 16th trip in the month, you get the rest of the month for free, just like everybody else. What a concept. The other thing that became very evident and was incorporated in 2018 was the ability to have a cash option. A lot of our customers don't have credit cards. They're unbanked. So how do you deal with that? So we have almost 900 different retail outlets throughout North Texas that you can go into now, and you can add cash to your GoPass account. And so it makes it a lot simpler, a lot easier. But now it's also more about combining the different modes, the TNCs, the Ubers, the Lyfts, the scooters, and again, designing that trip to meet your needs, to meet the customer's needs. So if you go to the next slide, let me back up and just talk a little bit about who we are, what we do. And I think many of you on this call are already very aware of what we do. Tom Ryden, of course, used to work at DART once upon a time. Tom, we've grown a little bit since you were at DART. We have almost 700 buses now. We have, if I haven't said it today, we have the longest light rail system in North America. And of course, and I know Brittany is smiling as I say that. And many of you have heard me say this before. Who would have thought in North Texas we would have that? But again, it's because it's not because DART has necessarily pushed it on people. It's because people have demanded transportation choices throughout the region. And of course, the commuter rail between Fort Worth and Dallas that we jointly operate with the Trinity Metro are GoLink zones, the 13 GoLink zones. And in a lot of our service area, we have parts of the community where maybe we don't have great ridership. So maybe we have buses that go every 60 minutes. Well, that's not very good service. And I can promise you the only people that are going to ride that bus are the people that absolutely have to. So in many cases where we did not have good service, or where we had maybe no service at all, we added these GoLink zones. Well, what is a GoLink zone? A GoLink zone is a geographically, spatially defined area that says that in this zone you can use our vans, or you can use an Uber pool vehicle, and you can call those vehicles up through your app. We started this with Toyota several years ago in the legacy area, but as we realized how well it worked, we said we need to expand this all over the place. Our initial metric was 10 minutes, so we said we need to have vans get to wherever you are within a 10-minute time period. Well, that was great until it got popular and everybody wanted that van within 10 minutes, and all of a sudden we realized we couldn't do that. In some cases, the response time became 20, 30, and even 40 minutes. So we realized we needed help. We called in the backups. We actually went to a public procurement, and Uber Pool was a successful proposer. So now if you're in the GoPass zone or GoLink zone, or you're going to a GoLink zone, you can go to the app, the GoPass app. It'll tell you that here are your choices. And one of your choices is GoLink. And once you choose GoLink, then it will ask you, do you want the van? The van is 12 minutes away, Or do you want an Uber pool vehicle? The Uber pool vehicle is 6 minutes away. So again, you as a consumer get to pick how you want your trip to come together and how you want it to work. And of course, as you can see, the streetcar, the regional connectivity with Trinity Metro, and then Uber, Lyft, and Zipcar is a little bit dated now, but the point is collaborating with all the transportation providers. Next slide, please. So just to for a minute, step back and think about what transportation looks like in the future. And of course, you know, I was on a call not too long ago, and someone said, okay, Gary, we want you to talk about what's happening right now in the next 6 months, perhaps. But what we really want to talk about is what happens in 2022 and beyond, realizing that while our world is certainly changing and it might be different, there's going to be a lot of things that are going to be very, very much the same. And as people come back to work, come back to doing whatever they're doing, congestion hasn't gone away, and we still need to continue to think about how we do these transportation projects, because this is a perfect opportunity for us to get a little bit ahead of the curve, because we know that you know, on these, and everybody on this call certainly is aware, as you go through a project, it can take years to get through the environmental process, to get through the planning process, to get the engineering, to get the construction part done. In many cases, it can be 10, 15, 20 years on some of these projects. So if we think about a multimodal hub, a transportation hub, this might be what it looks like. Now, this site is actually a real site. It's the Trinity Mills site on the Green Line. So that's Bush Turnpike in the background. And of course, you have the DCTA train on the left. You have the light rail train. You have CNG. You have electric buses. You have the electric vehicles. You'll have autonomous vehicles. You'll have the air taxis, of course. But the point is that all of the transportation opportunities, if you will, happen in a centralized area. So maybe it doesn't look quite like this. I showed this to one person at a conference a few years ago, and they said, well, Gary, that's nice, but there's too much concrete. You need more development. And perhaps that's true. Perhaps it, you know, as we talk about transit-oriented development, how that weaves itself into this kind of mobility hub, if you will, and how it all interrelates and interacts is something that I think everybody, certainly again on this call, is thinking about. How does that work? How does it happen? And how do we make it work best for the community that we serve? Next slide. Again, oftentimes I'll go and I'll speak to a particular group and they say, Gary, we really don't need transit anymore because transit's obsolete. It's passé. We got Uber, we have Lyft, we're going to have automated vehicles. It's all going to be wonderful. And again, certainly if you drive around today, congestion isn't too bad. You know, just to depart for a second, if you look at the travel times over the course of a day right now, we're not seeing the normal peaks in the morning and the normal peaks in the evening anymore. What you see is a gradual rise up to a peak, generally in the 2 to 3 o'clock in the afternoon time frame, and then it starts falling off again. But that, as we all know, that will change again, and we'll have congestion, even though it's a little hard to imagine right now. It will be back. There are too many cars, too many people, and not nearly enough roads, and you can't put everybody in a car on a road. Many of you recognize this slide, and for a long time, it was just two frames. It was a private vehicle and it was a bus. And it was a great way to illustrate that the 40 cars at that traffic light could all fit on one bus. And so when you think about, well, do automated vehicles and does Uber and Lyft solve that problem for us? No, not really. As Michael Morris would suggest, when we have automated vehicles, it'll be the first time in the history of the world that we'll have average occupancy rates of under 1 on our cars running around on the roads. Think about that for a second. So go to the next slide. And let me jump into a couple of the capital projects. I don't have any slides to talk too much about the platform lengthening project that's well underway. now, as many of you know, we're lengthening 28 of our platforms, primarily on the red and blue line, to allow us to run 3-car light rail vehicles throughout the system. We can already do that on the green line and the orange line, and a part of the blue line as it goes out to Rowlett from Garland. But most of the red and blue line can only accommodate a 2-car train. And what we saw certainly leading up to March of this year was that the trains were very crowded in the peak periods. And so we started lengthening the platforms, and that project is well underway. The other project that we're doing is we're actually doing an insert station at Hidden Ridge, the old Verizon site in Irving on the orange line. And that project is also underway. John tells me that we'll have it done here in another month or two. And I can't see his face on the screen. I know he's wincing right now or chuckling, one or the other, but the project is underway and we're moving very quickly toward having, that will be our second infill station, if you will, following the Lake Highland station. But this Silver Line is, as many of you know, is a project that's been on our books now since 1983. DART bought the project in the bought the rail line in the late 80s, early 90s. The part that DART owns actually goes from the stockyards in Fort Worth all the way over to the town of Wiley. And Fort Worth actually opened their section. They leased the corridor from us on the western side of the region, and they opened their section a little over a year ago now, and started running the trains out to DFW Airport. This project actually extends that project from DFW Airport all the way to Shiloh Road, and so you can see generally the alignment as it goes across the corridor from DFW Airport. It hits Cypress Waters, which is actually in the city of Dallas, through Carrollton, Addison, Dallas, Richardson, and into Plano. If you go to the next slide. So this is the project at a glance. We're about 60% complete with the design of the project, and we've actually started utility relocations back in November. And, you know, I chuckle when you talk about utility relocations. Many of us think about maybe there's some fiber lines, maybe there's a sewer line or something. One of the utility relocations on this project was a 60-inch water line in Carrollton. So as many of you know, when you start moving 60-inch water lines, that can be a project all by itself. But that project is pretty much, that part of the project is pretty much done. John was telling me yesterday that the rail train, the train that actually delivers the rail to the project, actually showed up in Carrollton yesterday. So the rail is now on site for much of the project, and we are certainly headed toward our completion date of 2022 as we initially expected. If you go to the next slide, please. And this again gives you just a highlight of where the stations are. Of course, we'll have the station at DFW Airport. That will be at Terminal B, as many of you know. At Terminal A is the Orange Line connection. Terminal B will be the Silver Line and TexRail connection. And of course, the station just on the north side of DFW Airport, DFW North, Cypress Waters, downtown Carrollton, Addison, Knoll Trail, of course, over to UT Dallas, City Line Bush, 12th Street and Shiloh Road. And as you go across the corridor and you think about some of these stations, Cypress Waters, if you've been to Cypress Waters lately, you know that Lucy Billingsley, her development is just going great. Great guns, they're growing, they're building, and it's continuing to expand. And she's incredibly excited about weaving in this corridor into that development, understanding the benefit that it has for her development and that community. Downtown Carrollton, again, if you think about downtown Carrollton, a few mayors ago, the mayor said, you know, Gary, all the rail lines kind of converge in downtown Carrollton. And at the time, there were mostly freight corridors, but he had that vision of what these passenger corridors could really mean to downtown Carrollton. And then when you look at Addison, you know that the Addison will always say, that we had our transit-oriented development community without the transit. Knoll Trail, just on the other side of the toll road, UT Dallas, we have some of our highest ridership bus routes and a lot of ridership on the light rail that goes to and around UT Dallas. City Line Bush, again, the developers, KDC, when they were looking at City Line Bush, they appreciated 75, they appreciated Bush, but they also appreciated the fact that you'd have a commuter rail line and a light rail line right there at City Line Bush. 12th Street Station is already in the development phases. The City of Plano is working with their developer on the 12th Street Station development. And then, of course, the line ends at Shiloh Road. The point is, as you go across this corridor, the corridor is just dotted with a lot of different areas, places that the rail line is really going to make a big difference to. So, Tom, you asked if the ridership drop due to COVID was sharp and immediate, or stated that it was, and do I foresee a permanent drop in ridership resulting in DART providing less service than it did the first of this year? And are we providing proactive moves? And so when I get to the COVID part, I'll kind of swing back and talk about where we are. I think there's a short and long-term approach to that. Certainly the long-term approach, as I've said, is our region. I mean, there have been pandemics in the world before. We've forgotten about those. They might have been 70, 80, 100 years ago, but they happened, or maybe 1,000 years ago. And many times you look at I was reading an article in the Washington Post not too long ago that talked about how pandemics end, and they end either medically or socially. And we're seeing that odd combination, but we're seeing something that perhaps our parents' generation probably didn't experience. Maybe their parents' generation did with the Spanish flu, but what we do know is that this too shall pass, and things will end up going back to whatever normal looks like. And I'll get to ridership here in a minute. If you go to the next slide, Jeff. The other big project that we're working on, of course, as many of you know, is the second alignment downtown Dallas. And Steve Salin, who's the head of that project, would want to make sure that I told everybody that design is in the 20% complete range. We hope to be 30% complete on the design in the October timeframe. And this kind of gives you an overview of the project, what it looks like, and where it goes, the cost, so on and so forth. We are working through our supplemental draft. As a matter of fact, we just completed the 45-day comment period. We had a couple of public hearings, and the comment period ended on June 29th. We had a few comments, but not anything that was insurmountable. As many of you might imagine, the biggest challenge on this project is really how do we interrelate with 345? How do we get past 345? If you go to the next slide, Jeff, you can see 345 over on the eastern side of this alignment. Again, we're working very closely with TxDOT, City of Dallas, the Council of Governments on what that interaction looks like, what that interface looks like. We're ahead of 345, and again, TxDOT's been very good about working with us to say, okay, here's what we think is going to happen to 345, what the options might be, and here's what the opportunities and options might be for D2 as far as getting past that. So we're optimistic that we'll have everything in place to submit to the FTA this year, get our record of decision toward the end of this year, and head into final design next year, 21, start utility relocations in 21, and construction in earnest in 22, and be complete with this project in 2025. So this project is also moving along. You can see the 4 stations, Museum Way, which is near the Perot Museum, Metro Center, which is in the West End, near the West End station, of course, Commerce, near the AT&T World Headquarters, and then over on the east side, CBD East, near Farmers Market and the CBD East Transfer Center. big project. You know, there's so much to talk about on this project as far as what we're doing and how it's progressing. We're very optimistic and very excited about this project getting into the final design stage next year. Next slide, please. So COVID certainly has rocked all of our worlds. We realize that. DART went to what we called a Saturday plus level of service on April 6th. Our ridership did drop a few weeks before that, and it dropped down to about 60 to 70% below where we typically would be. Rail and bus were in the 60% down, commuter rail was 70% down. Commuter rail, and these numbers are very typical of what we've seen around the United States, except for some of the highest ridership, most dense parts of the country, we're actually down 90 to 95%. So if you looked at New York, New Jersey, San Francisco, most of their systems were down in the 90 to 95% range. They're just now back up to where we are. So those systems are generally in the 50%, 55% down, which is about where we are right now, 50, 55% down. But we introduced a different level of service in April, which is great. We also, because it started to match up the level of service with the ridership, but remember who's riding the buses, those essential employees that are trying to get to work, many of them working in the healthcare industry, and trying to make sure that their life isn't any more disrupted than it already was at the time and still is. So the other things that we looked at is how do we protect our drivers, the drivers of the buses. The trains, not so much, they're in a compartment, but the drivers of the buses, everybody walks in the front door of the bus and there you are. So we said, okay, now we're going to say everybody goes in the back door of the bus. We put up, for lack of a more technical term, we put up a clear shower curtain across where the bus driver sits. And then we put up a barrier in the bus so people couldn't go forward of that barrier. So the only people that were boarding on the front door of the bus after that period of time, after April 6th, were people that had mobility devices and needed to have the ramp deployed to be able to get on and off the bus. So that rocked along for a little while, and of course cleaning started to pick up. We started to understand how important it was to clean on a very regular basis. Initially it said, okay, we're going to clean this many times a week, and pretty quickly we realized how hard that was. We've added between 30 and 40 people just to clean buses and trains every single day. So on a bus, most of our buses are cleaned midday and in the evenings. And then on the trains, and these are high touch areas on the trains, we clean at the end of the line. So red and blue every 60 minutes, orange and green every 90 minutes. And then in the evenings, both buses and trains get deep cleaning. And then once a week, we actually own foggers now and sprayers. And you might have seen commercials recently with some of the airlines where someone's walking through the airplane with this sprayer. And we have the same thing. We have over 75 sprayers. We have foggers now. We have almost 30 foggers. Foggers are like a giant bug bomb, for lack of a more technical term. You put it on the train, in the bus, or in an office building, and it sprays the fog. It gets into every nook and cranny like a bug bomb, and it kills all the germs on that train and bus. We do that on all trains and buses on a weekly basis. So the trains and buses are cleaned regularly. The shower curtains have come down. We have clear plexiglass shields now on all of our buses. The entire fleet of buses have these plexiglass shields. We've gone back to front door boarding. We require masks for everybody that rides on a train or bus. On the bus, if someone doesn't have a mask, our operator actually has masks that they can hand them. On the trains, our fare enforcement officers, our police officers will hand out masks to people that don't have masks. If they see someone that doesn't have a mask, they offer a mask, that person refuses to wear a mask, then we ask them to get off the train or bus. All of those things are happening. It's kind of become commonplace to us. We're closing in on about 70 of our employees have tested positive. Close to 30 of those have returned to work. We've had 2 pass away. As we look to the future, as we look at budget, many of you know sales tax really is the bulk of our revenue stream. So it's down a little bit. It's not down nearly as much as what we thought it was going to be. People are still, I don't know about your households, but the FedEx guys, the Amazon people know exactly where we live now. And they've actually put this, so we're a little remote most days of the week. And they actually have this big red bin up by the gate, and they just dump all our stuff in there now. So we go up and check it on a pretty regular basis, and it's they know exactly where we are. But the point is sales tax is not down nearly as much as we projected, but it is down. So we have to look at what that future holds. Tom, to your point, ridership dropped 60. Now it's back up about 15% above where it initially dropped to. It's flattened out at that level for the most part. And of course, as we look to the future, we'll have a service change in October. We'll do some minor tweaks in July, but we'll do a service change in October. And what that really looks to do, what the staff proposal is, and we'll have a public hearing coming up shortly, is to match service and ridership. And as ridership grows, we have trigger points, and we have service back. We'll add service back, but the service that we're putting back on the street in October is really trying to match up where the people are that are riding the buses and the trains. You know, there's certain parts of the community that people still aren't going to ride the bus, and that's fine. We'll have maybe 40 or 60-minute routes in those areas. But for those areas where people are riding the bus and riding the train every day, in most cases, we're going to restore service to pre-pandemic levels. And that's so, you know, your high bus areas, parts of Irving, certainly Garland, and then parts of the southern part of city of Dallas. Light rail, as I said, continues to be actually pretty strong. So on any given day right now, we have a little over 100,000 folks that are riding trains and buses, and it's split pretty much equally between the two. So that's where we are. Again, as many of you know, we've got a 20-year financial plan that informs what we do, when we do it, how we do it. And so we just keep our fingers crossed that sales taxes continue to be higher than projected, and we'll see where it goes. So, Jeff, that's the presentation. Thank you guys for listening to me this morning. I know it was early, but I'm certainly happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Gary, very much. We've got a couple of questions, so I'm going to start calling on people to ask their questions. And I think our first question, you alluded to it in the presentation, is from Tom. Do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Certainly. And again, apologies, Gary, for interrupting your presentation flow with my other questions.
That's okay.
I just thought you'd wait till the end, but that's fine. I'm really glad to hear that the ridership is coming back, because the function that DART provides is so important to the community. I don't live in the service area, but your discussion of the things that you have been doing as an agency, with cleaning and fogging and protecting the operators and different boarding strategies. You think there might be a benefit if there was like a public information spots on a regular basis that would help convince people and give them a sense of well, yeah, it is safe to come back?
Right, exactly. And Tom, I appreciate the question. We actually put together a marketing plan. It started rolling out on July 6th. You probably haven't seen anything yet because when we started working on the marketing plan, we anticipated that the levels would be a little better than they turned out to be. As everybody knows, we've had many days in Dallas County of over 1,000 positives on a daily basis. So we pared back the marketing plan just a little bit, but we're pushing it out through social media. You'll start to see some things on TV and radio, and to do exactly that, to communicate to people that we are cleaning trains and buses. We have a lot of employees that, while we haven't fully come back to 1401 yet, we have a lot of employees that are riding the trains and buses into work every day. And as you can certainly appreciate, my number one focus is our employee safety and our customer safety. And so we certainly take the cleaning part of it very, very seriously. And you'll start to see those announcements exactly as you suggested.
And Tom, did you have a second question you wanted to ask too?
No, that was it. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, great. Gary, I have a question. I'm hoping you can provide an update on some of the collaborations that you've been doing with the Parks Department and Public Artworks with Office of Cultural Affairs in Dallas, and some of the things that we've been seeing pop up throughout the city in those realms.
You know, absolutely. First, let me back up and say DART has always been a regional leader in developing art around our stations. You know, it's a nominal amount as it relates to the project relative to the project cost. But when you start individualizing each one of our facilities to the community immediately around it, it really does become part of the community. And we actually, Jeff, as you know, we actually invite the community to be part of that art and design committee to talk about what the station looks like, what that DART facility looks like. So as you look at the entire DART system, it's one of the largest collections of public art in the southwestern United States. And that's not any different as we look to the future, whether it be on the Silver Line or on the D2 project. And the D2 project specifically, because we're going, you know, used to, you didn't have to worry about parks downtown. Well, now the good news is we have a lot of parks downtown. The challenge is as you try to run a train underground or even at grade through downtown, we have all these parks that we have to work around and make sure that the integrity of the park remains the same. And so one of the examples I'll share with you is Pegasus Plaza. Many of you are familiar with Pegasus Plaza in downtown Dallas. It's a beautiful park, has a water feature, a really great space as it was initially envisioned, certainly. Over the years, it's gotten a little tired. It's turned into something a little bit different than what was originally envisioned as far as the use of the park. There's a hotel on the south side of the park that it really has never interacted well with the park. And so as we looked at where we could really access the tunnel in the middle of D2 and how we could incorporate some type of access portal to the station in that particular location, it dawned on us, and I'll give Steve and his team all the credit. How can we really use Pegasus Plaza to do that, to access the construction site? Because as you know, when you start digging tunnels anywhere, you need large spaces to access, unless we're going to do a cut and cover and rip up Commerce, which nobody would be too excited about. And, you know, that's including Jacobs, who isn't too far from Commerce. But we said there's got to be a better way. So we went to the folks that originally created, the original funders, the original movers and shakers behind Pegasus Plaza, and said, we have an idea. And this is what the idea is. We want to use this station, so we're going to dismantle the entire park, stone by stone, and then we're going to use that space for construction access, and then we're going to put it back together stone by stone, but we're going to enhance it. We're going to have this, rather than the back of the Magnolia Hotel, we're going to have this really cool looking portal to get down into the station that livens up that space. And we're going to redo some of the things that have gotten tired. And if you've been in that area, you know that there were some really, the ripples, if you will, where Pegasus put his foot, and there were ripples that went out into the streets. Well, as the streets have been worked on, those ripples have been asphalted over, and a lot of the integrity of that park has been lost over the years anyway. So it gives us a chance to revitalize, re-energize that park, and the people, the original folks that really had the vision for the park were super excited. And so now we're working with the Parks Department to make sure that we do all of that, integrate what we're doing, and that it comes out not like it is, but better than it is. And so that's, I know not everybody gets in line with this necessarily, but that's really what we try to do as we look at each one of our projects, is how we can make it better than before.
Thanks, Gary. As the park board member for D11, I appreciate your efforts on that. We've got time for, I think, one more question, and it's from Dev Rastogi from AECOM. Dev, do you want to unmute and ask your question? And good morning, Dev.
Good morning. I'm sorry for joining late. Gary had a few technical difficulties.
Okay,
thank you for being on this morning and for sharing, what DART's doing on these great capital projects, as well as what you're doing during COVID. And I've noticed a number of public meetings and public hearings that DART has had using different tools and technology. And I'm just sort of curious about your perspective on how successful those have been in having that, level of public engagement that DART is really known for and right. Takes great pride in. So I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
Thank you. And you're right. When we think, and I'm absolutely biased, but we think we do the best job of any public entity, certainly in the Southwest, if not the entire universe, when it comes to public engagement. And it's not always about everybody getting exactly what they want, but it's always about making sure that we've heard every single person and what their concerns are, and doing the very best that we can to respond to those particular concerns. We have a series of meetings this week, for example, on the Silver Line, the betterments projects on the Silver Line, and making sure everybody is aware of what's going on. But to your point, two big projects that we had public hearings, public meetings on. D2 was one of them, and of course the re-envisioning the Zoom program for our bus system, where we're completely redoing our entire bus system throughout the entire service area. And the hope is that we'll have that new bus system in place in January of 2022. But to do that, it's envisioned to be an iterative process. So in other words, we tell people, this is what we're thinking about doing. Give us some feedback. Let us design something. Then we're going to tell you what we think we heard. And we're going to take more feedback, and then we're going to tweak it some more, and then put it in place, like I said, in January of 2022. So the good news is we started those public meetings before pre-COVID, and so there was certainly some awareness. But the challenge, of course, as we go into the COVID environment, you start doing things virtually. It's number one, it's making sure people are aware. It's number two, it's about connectivity. And we've seen a lot of information, certainly recently, and I know Dr. Hinojosa is very engaged in the connectivity of the entire community as they think about education perspectives, but that's also true from our perspective, from a public input perspective, making sure that people have connectivity. We know that we've done some Facebook Live events on the DART Zoom program and had, several hundred people engage. But as we look at where people engaged from, maybe we didn't reach all the people that we needed to reach. And that's one of the things that the good news is we know where the people were that we did engage, but we also know where they weren't. And so I guess, and the good news there is now we can target very specifically some techniques to reach the people in the communities that we really, really do need to get feedback from before we move forward. So it's been challenging. We've on the D2 project, we had two virtual public hearings, And then the FTA actually asked us to have an in-person public hearing. And so we did that. And in all cases, you know, we didn't have a lot of folks show up. But again, we've had meeting after meeting after meeting on D2. So there's been a ton of involvement over the last several years on D2. So yeah, it's not as great as we'd like for it to be, because we really do put a lot of importance on getting input and feedback from everybody. But in the Zoom DART re-envisioning process, it's allowed us to say, okay, we obviously didn't hit this community, and we need to. So now we can say we're going to actually develop a program to reach into that community, whether it goes to the faith-based community or however we reach into that community. We know what we need to do.
Thanks so much, Gary. Thanks, Deb, for that question. Before we close it out, we have a couple of people that have joined a little bit late. As Deb referenced, she's one of them. So I want to give everybody a chance who joined late to do a brief introduction. So Deb, we'll start with you.
Good morning again, everybody. I'm Deborah Stogie with AECOM.
Thanks, Deb. I see Andrew Iddickson. Andrew, good morning.
Hi, Jeff. Yeah, hi, it's Andrew Iddickson, planner with the AECOM.
Thanks for being here, Andrew. Wendy, good morning. We're on a roll here.
I round up all the e-commerce.
I'm glad you got them all wrangled together.
Yes, that was. I got a couple more. Ping, good morning. Ping, are you there?
Yeah, good morning. This is Peng. I'm also with AECOM.
Great. Thanks very much. All right, let me try to find a non-AECOM person. Debbie Richards, good morning. Debbie, you're on mute.
Thank you. Debbie Richards, Dallas College, Richland campus.
Thanks, Debbie. Ken Hughes, good morning.
Yep, Ken Hughes, Hewitt Dollars.
Thanks, Ken, for being here. Tim McKay.
Good morning. Tim McKay. I work with Gary at DART, and pleasure to be here. Good job, boss.
Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Tim.
Tony Sosby. Tony, good morning. Tony's one of our board members.
Good morning. Tony Sosby with Hewitt Sellers. Hi, Gary.
Hey, Tony.
Did I miss anybody?
Jeff, it's been a pleasure to be here this morning. I've loved seeing all the people. Lots of friends for many, many years now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gary. And as a token of our appreciation for you doing this, we'll be making a contribution in your name at the end of the fiscal year to the North Texas Food Bank. So we appreciate you being here. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Bob to close us out.
Thanks again, Gary, for your thoughtful remarks. It's always good to hear from you, and sounds like the agency is doing great during these challenging times. Thanks again. Our next meeting will be Tuesday, September 8th, and we'll make sure and line up another great speaker. And back to you, Jeff. Do you want to cover the conference?
Yes. So real briefly, just an update on our Transportation Crossroads Conference, which is scheduled for Friday, December 11th. And I think Gary is scheduled to be one of our panelists there. We are currently planning on that to be an in-person conference this year, as we've done in the past at the Hilton Anatole. Of course, we're starting to adjust our programming for some of our larger conferences that are taking place earlier in the fall, such as our education conference, and our most likely are going to be converted to virtual. Those are in September. We're hoping that by December, things will be back to normal and we'll be able to offer the Transportation Crossroads Conference in its normal format at the Anatole. However, we know that we're going to have to be flexible, so stay tuned for more information about that. And if you're on the planning committee and you've got ideas or thoughts on what you think we should be doing, let me know. We still need to find a few more speakers, but we are excited that I think Gary's confirmed to participate in a panel discussion there, and we'll look forward to seeing you all for the Transportation Crossroads Conference in some capacity, whether it's in person or it's virtual. So plan on December 11th if you haven't already saved the date for that. And the one other thing that I would briefly plug is Gary referenced Dr. Hinojosa and DISD. We've got Dr. Hinojosa confirmed to present at a leadership briefing on August 4th at 2 p.m. That'll be a virtual program. I'll leave the information on how to register for that in the chat feature. And other than that, we will adjourn, but we will keep this open for networking and dialogue. So feel free to stick around and chat, and we'll stay on the line. Thanks again, Gary. Thanks, Bob. And thanks to everyone for being here.
Thank you, Gary.
Thanks to Phil, also Phil and Spenta for setting it up.
Yes, of course. Thanks to Phil and Spenta. And I want to recognize Ken. I think Ken's got something to say.
No, the only comment I was going to make, and you made a reference to our leadership briefing series. It happens to be one of the sponsors of that series happens to be DART. So thank you, DART and Gary, for your support of that series.
Bet, Ken.
Yeah, so I'm going to add that into the chat box right now, so y'all can sign up for it. And then otherwise, stick around and network. And it's great to see everybody. I know it's a strange time.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks so much, Gary.
Thanks, Gary. So what was the deal with all the AECOM people getting on late?
Little technical difficulty, like having it put on the calendar at the wrong time.
Right.
Jeff, I had the same problem.
Oh no, Phil.
It showed up on my calendar at 9 o'clock.
When we downloaded it from the website, we understand it populated at 9 o'clock instead of at 8.
Oh.
Yeah, and I did mine 5 times, and it did it 5 times.
Okay.
So,
well, we'll raise that with Lizeth and WebLink and see if they can fix that issue. Sorry about that, everybody.
normally we're more timely.
At least we were consistent.
Yes, that's the truth. Good to see you, Wendy.
Mine came in at 9 o'clock too, so I just sent Jeff an email and apologized because I signed on like at 3 minutes before 9. So I'm glad it wasn't just me.
Yeah.
We'll try to get that glitch fixed. I think most of y'all are on the distribution list for the committee. Did it work for y'all?
No, it did not.
Did not. Okay.
I'm not on the committee, but I mean, I got the emails from the chamber. None of them worked.
Okay. But did anybody get the email from, like, Bob, you're on my distribution list. Did that come through at 8 a.m. for you?
Yes, sure.
Okay.
Sure.
All right. So we'll have to figure out what the disconnect there was.
I think you still have my old email address.
I know that. I realized that this morning you were texting me that I had sent.
I was like, why am I not getting these?
I apologize for that, Deb.
Right.
Hey Jeff, was this recorded?
Yes, it was recorded. And also, and Gary, if it's okay with you, I'll email the presentation to everybody.
That's fine.
Okay. Yeah.
And the recording, since we missed part of your presentation, Gary.
Like all of it.
We really didn't mean to, Gary, so apologies, man.
That's okay. You got the best part, Andy.
Wendy, we'll just have Gary start over for all of the AECOM folks right now.
All right.
Encore.
So Gary, any travel plans, or are you going to be hunkered down the rest of this time?
You know, we're pretty well hunkered down. APTA, American Public Transportation Association, has pretty much put off everything until next year. So I think it's just between here and Bosque County for us.
Yeah. Have you been getting down there regularly?
We're down there probably all but 2 or 3 days a week.
Wow, good for you. Golly, that's great.
Yeah, so that's why the FedEx or the Amazon people, they put this big red tub up by the gate. And I was nice enough to spray all the poison ivy, so.
Yeah, that is great. That is really good.
Yeah.
Well, Wendy, it's good to see you. We haven't seen you in a while. How are you doing?
Nice to see you too, Ken. I'm doing good. You know, I miss people, but you know, I think like everybody, I hear that people are taking small vacations and they're wherever they can drive to, like a state park or something, so they can be outdoors, not have to get on an airplane, but can drive somewhere. So I've been thinking about maybe where I want to go. I've been riding my bike a lot, which is good, you know, being outdoors.
Yeah.
You just got to watch for those pesky cars that can run you down.
Yeah. Get all those people off the road and put them on DART buses and light rail. So
It's not that there are really that many people on the road. It's just that the roads are so unimpeded. People drive kind of crazy at times.
Yeah, no kidding.
Tell you what, if you drive down I-45, everybody on the planet is going down I-45 because nobody's flying. It's crazy. It's bumper to bumper on 45, going about 90 miles an hour. Build that train. Build
the train. Good. A question for everybody. Has anybody on this call been on a plane in the last 3 months?
My son has been. He flew in this past week. And,
nobody else?
Not me.
Isn't that amazing?
I don't
Well,
think
how
I've
do you
been
think-
playing
how
in
do you-
2020.
Yeah, how do you think Southwest Airlines and American Airlines feel about that?
They're not very happy.
Yeah.
Well, from some of the pictures that I've seen, it doesn't really seem like they're abiding by social distancing very much especially like in the terminals and then on the plane too. So I have some friends that do still travel a lot by air for work, and they get notifications when American Airlines isn't going to leave the empty seat in the middle for them, which it's happening more and more. So I think that's keeping people from even feeling more safe flying.
Yeah.
Hey, Gary, you might have talked about this in your talk, but I was just wondering, what are you guys thinking about, return to service to have more like touchless stuff? Are you guys working with, and I don't know if APTA's coming up with some maybe guidance or new fandangled technology or something that is going to help people in transit and probably in airports.
Yeah, so the good news, Wendy, is we were already, I talked a little bit about the GoPass app and also the GoPass tap card. So the good news is we already had those in place. The idea is that we go as contactless as possible as we look to the future, so nobody has to touch anything. So hopefully we can get more people to use those tap cards and use the GoPass app. And so we're working on how we convince, in many cases, it's folks that are unbanked. And it's just, getting the cards in their hands. We have plenty of cash options for people to add cash, but it's kind of breaking the years of habit of putting $1 in the cash box when you get on the bus. But it's a big part of our marketing campaign that I talked about earlier that maybe you didn't hear.
No.
No, it's a good point. Cashless is a big part of what we're headed toward.
Hey, Gary, can you repeat the numbers you said about the number of positive cases you had within your employee population?
Yeah, we're in the between the 60 and 70 range. We've got I think about 30 to between 30 and 35 that are back at work or will be back at work, and then 2 have passed away. So it's not good news at all that we have any, but our percentages are relatively low. We have 4,000 positions, so we're in the 1.5% range, roughly. And we really, while we've seen climbs lately, we jumped up. So as I look at other transit agencies, so I talk to VIA Houston, San Antonio, and Austin on a weekly basis, and we certainly jumped out of the gate quicker than they did. But our curve, if you will, is really flattened out, and their curves are just going up exponentially. Houston, San Antonio, especially.
And did you say you had a death?
We've had 2.
2 deaths. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Wow, that has to be really hard on the entire culture and employee population.
Well, it is, and we've stressed over and over and over again that it doesn't matter if you're at work or not at work. And a lot of, we do a lot of tracing of our employees if they show positive. We actually have a doctor under contract, and coincidentally, we've had this doctor under contract for a while, so it was pre-COVID, but he's also helping us think through how we deal with testing, how we deal with the numbers. But talked to him yesterday. He said, it's the same things we hear: wear a mask, socially distance, and wash your hands. And it was fascinating to listen to him kind of lay the numbers out. Most people, he said, and again, I'm certainly not the expert, and so I'm a little hesitant, but what he was telling us was that normally once you are exposed and the virus jumps to your body, however it gets there, it takes about 2 days for that virus to incubate in your body. And then days 3 and 4, you're generally contagious, but you don't know it because the symptoms haven't started showing up yet. And that's, according to him, that's really the most dangerous time because you're exposing other people and you're not doing it intentionally. Day 5 is when you're normally going to start showing a cough and maybe loss of taste, loss of smell. Day 5.5, day 6, you might start showing a fever. And then, according to him, 86% of the people, 8.5 days after they start showing symptoms, they're okay again. But you don't know how your body's going to react. We always hear about underlying conditions, and he said certainly underlying conditions, but be healthy, ride your bike, Wendy. Do all the things that you're supposed to do. Eat well, exercise daily. And he says that puts your body, get 7 hours of sleep. I've got to work on that part. And he stressed that a couple of times, but he said exercise, sleep, stay healthy, and that puts your body in the best place to deal with it. So our challenge, of course, for all of us is to communicate that to our employees. And it's also to communicate to our employees that when you go home, follow the same rules.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly.
Gary, were they older? Your 2 employees that you lost?
One was in his 30s, one was in his 70s.
Wow.
And we've got two right now that are in the hospital. One is in his early 60s, I believe, mid 60s maybe. And I don't know how old the other one is.
I was talking to this pediatrician the other day. That's been maybe 3 weeks ago. And we hadn't had very many young people that had succumbed to the coronavirus. Usually the young ones, they get it, but they would bounce back. But there had been just 2 or 3 deaths. And so I said, what do you think about that? And she said, well, what they hadn't told us. I said, what? And she said that at the time, and there might have been more since then, but at that time, she said the young ones that had died had been morbidly obese. And so I think really weight seems to be, at least for the young ones, a big factor. For those of us that are getting at the other side of the scale, just being old, we got to stay healthy.
Yep, that's right. Well, it struck me that he said at least 7 hours of sleep at night. And I don't know about you guys, but I rarely get 7 hours of sleep.
Well, I missed part of that conversation. It sounds like you were talking about being old. I qualify. I don't know how old everybody else is, but I'm 76 and I don't go out much anymore.
Yeah.
That's smart.
Yeah, that's amazing. So Bob, what are you thinking about for our next program? Maybe we could pick Gary's brain and see if he's got any good suggestions.
As a matter of fact, I was just writing an email to Jeff. It'd be nice to hear a perspective from NCTCOG on overall ridership, traffic volumes, and I know Michael Morris, his philosophy is build things now while traffic volumes are low, help improve the economy, get projects on the ground. And that way, when things are back to normal, our region will be able to compete against the other regions. So perhaps him or his staff could be available.
Michael actually has a really good slideshow about potential stimulus-funded project, candidate projects, and some ideas about, might be the time to go big on some projects. But, the only thing about those is that if the same criteria comes out that they used before, it was like shovel ready. So you had to go to construction within 12 months. And some of these bigger projects, they might not fit that, they might not be ready to start construction. But I think that there's certainly some good projects in North Texas that we should all get around. And Michael's got them.
And Gary has one. Right
Yeah, I think D2 is on the list, Gary.
Yeah. I think D2 is going to be ready to go.
There you go. That would be a perfect candidate.
There you go. But you might remember the Orange Line that went to the DFW airport was one of the first ones to take advantage of the shovel-ready, the stimulus funding back in 2010-11 timeframe. So one of the first ones to take advantage of it, one of the first ones to close out. So we're hopeful that there's some funding that'll be available and ready to go.
Yeah. When somebody mentioned the high-speed train, I mean, that'd be another one that's like in the final throes of this ELS. Yeah. And if that, that project has been privately funded up till now, but, maybe the public funds could push it over the edge and let's get it going.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Gary, have you had many conversations with Colin Allred and EBJ recently?
We're in close contact with their offices. Obviously, the CARES Act transit got a really needed, much needed, and a nice boost from the CARES Act, industry-wide, $25 billion. 230 million of that came to DART. So that was very helpful, and so we've let them know how much we appreciate them. Also, as we watch the new transportation bill kind of wind its way through Congress, and of course the Senate's doing something a little bit different, we're pretty active in making sure we communicate with our delegation, both on the House and Senate side, letting them know what's important to us from a funding standpoint and what we'd like to see in the bill. Obviously, we like the House version best. We'll see. Hope. My fear, Ken, is that they, everybody suspects there's a window of time that the transportation bill could get out before it gets mired in the presidential election, and that's not a lot of time, quite frankly. And so hopefully the House and Senate can appreciate the need for this bill more so than ever before, and actually come together and get something done and get it out the door.
That's a good reminder, sir, that everyone should go vote today.
I can't believe I forgot to mention that.
I normally vote on the first day of early voting, but our locations were so weird because everything is shut down. So I'm going to have to be one of those people that go and actually votes on election day.
Where will you vote, Brittany?
I'm over with the rest of the millennials in Uptown. So I think Revachon is the closest to me, but I follow like the Reform Dallas Facebook page, and apparently their machines were down earlier. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah.
Brittany, North Dallas High School has a voting location as well.
Okay. Thanks,
so,
Ben.
Yeah, that's real close to our house. And Ben Milam Elementary School, if you want zero lines. There'll probably be zero lines anyway, but
Yeah.
Ben Milam Elementary School at McKinney and Fitzhugh is also a voting location.
Okay, yeah. I'll probably check out Revachon first because that's where I take all my recycling. And I need to take my recycling anyway, so.
Yeah.
Oh, Brittany.
And for anyone who's voting in North Dallas, when I voted last week early at Fretz Park, there was no line. So
Really?
that's probably a pretty good location.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if that's where I could go vote, Jeff.
Well, I think Fretz will be election day voting location, but I'm not certain of that. And sometimes in the past, it's been early voting, but not day of voting. But I think it should be. So
I voted there as well, early. Yeah.
Oh, good.
No, and there was no one there
No
except
line.
for
Yeah.
my husband and I. We voted together, and it was just us and the voting poll workers. So that's it.
Yeah, that was my experience as well too.
In and out.
So do you wear a mask to go vote? I thought I had heard that you couldn't. Okay. I thought I'd heard that you weren't supposed to, but okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely wear a mask.
Well,
Does anybody have a clue where you go in Carrollton?
Hey,
Well, Bob, are you in Dallas County?
yeah.
You can
No,
vote
I'm
anywhere
not.
you want in Dallas County.
I'm in Denton County.
Yeah. Oh, well then.
So Bob, go to page 11 of the Metro section of the Dallas Morning News. I know you still get the hard copy, and page 11 has every voting location.
Actually, I
voting
don't get the
location
hard
is-
copy, but I do take it online.
Okay. Anyway, that has every voting location in all of the counties, at least on the eastern half of the North Texas region.
Okay, thank you.
Where do we get the stylish DART masks?
Oh yeah. Yeah. How do we get those, Brittany?
Look at that.
So as Dev knows, one of the things that we've been doing since COVID started is partnering with different organizations to help with some community relief. And so we got these fancy DART serves masks made because one of the partnerships that we did was with DISD and with Garland ISD. We were helping them hand out their lunches to kiddos that qualify for free lunch but couldn't get to the schools. And so our payment, so to speak, were these cool little masks that we got to wear out. So I think we'll be close to over 100,000 meals by the time that we're done. We've handed out to families in need.
We're still doing it, so anybody that is registered paratransit user will actually go pick up their food at the grocery store for them.
Wow.
Yeah, and then we'll do the DISD lunch handout through the end of July. We've done some stuff with Catholic Charities and the Brady Center, with the TD Jakes Foundation, with Richardson ISD. So it's been a really good way for us to get out and help the community and do something productive. And it gets me out of the house because, like all of you, I'm a people person. I was not designed to sit all day.
Yeah.
All the people are still on this call.
Like, I miss human interaction.
That's right.
Yes, I do too. I'm trying to figure out how Jeff gets his kids to come and be in the room with him. I try to get my grandkids in here. They run as fast as they can the minute they find out I'm on the computer.
Yeah.
Jeff, is that your artist?
Sophie wanted to say hi to everybody.
Hey.
Hi, Sophie.
Camp, but her
Hi,
camp
Sophie.
Hi.
Hello.
Right.
What did you say, Gary?
Is she your artist?
Yes, she is the artist in the back of the artwork in the background. Yes.
Sophie, I love your pictures.
There's a lot more on this side.
Yeah, I think you need to work on some more today.